Welcome to the North Carolina Sheriff Police Alliance. What we're going to do today, we're going to meet and greet the candidates and have conversations with different ones. Each time there'll be one candidate per interview, and our goal is to bring to you, the public, law enforcement officers in general, our candidates. Who's running, why they're running, what district they're running in, and this is a place where we're going to let them speak for themselves. We're not going to do a whole lot of talking for them. We'll have questions, but we want to hear what their platforms are. We're not here to guide them or direct them to what they say, what they need to say, or what their platform should be. I will base my questions based on the interview and the conversation, and there are no questions at this point that I've had for any of the NC House candidates here in North Carolina. So without further ado, I'd like to turn over to the next candidate, and he can explain who he is, what he's running for, what his name is, and everything that goes with it. So welcome to the North Carolina Sheriff Police Alliance meet and greet the candidates.
Thank you, Rick. Again, I'm Donald Kirkland. I'm running for the NC House 5 seat. That is Hereford, Gates, Pasquotank, and now Camden counties. A little bit about myself. I'm a father of 4. I lost one 3 years ago to addiction, to alcoholism, and over the years, substance abuse. I've got 4 grandchildren, 2 that passed as they were born. So I'm a well-rounded, family-oriented individual. My kids come first, as do my grandkids. I'm God Country family. That's foremost. I swore an oath to this country, and when I took my uniform off, that never ended. Doesn't end until I'm in the ground. I'm pro-God, pro-gun, pro-life, and I'm a constitutional textualist. And what that means is I believe in the text of the Constitution as it's written. It does not need any interpretation. My morals and values can't be bought by anyone or any party, anybody, any party elite. My feet are firmly planted. My backbone is strong. I am firm in my belief as your public servant. As I have proven with many years of service on various boards, both civic and county, that I will represent you in Raleigh with my utmost ability.
So, okay, well then let me ask you a question here. Is this your first run for office?
No, I ran in 2020 against him during the pandemic, against Howard Hunter, the Democrat. We come close to beating him. I am the first Republican to ever carry the county of Gates County by more than 400 votes. We've come close to tying in Pasquotank County. In the Hereford County, we have 1,500 registered Republicans, and I was able to get 2,700 votes out of Hereford County. And that was in the middle of a pandemic where we were not allowed to campaign. And I believe this time we can finally take it. And all the pundits and all the reports I'm seeing that this district now, I believe, is an R+1. Now, depending on which demographics that you look at.
So it sounds like you've been out doing campaigning hard, and it's a lot of difference when you're in the pandemic and when you're not. So it makes a huge difference.
It does.
I really do believe that you got to press the flesh and have conversations with people. Running for office takes a lot of effort, so I know that. So there's no doubt in my mind that can be very taxing too. It takes a lot of your time. So how do you balance your time? How do you balance time? And if elected, how would you balance your time representing North Carolina?
Well, first, representing this district, I will make sure that every individual knows that I'm their servant. I'm available to them day or night. Naturally, I have to cut off time frames. I got to sleep at least a couple hours. But I've been balancing this kind of thing now for a while. I was the chairman of the Hereford County Veterans Advisory Council. I was the chairman of the Hereford County Republican Party until recently. I'm currently the secretary of both the Hereford County Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Adjustment, where we stay busy there. Commander of the Sons of American Legion, as well as adjutant chaplain and historian for the American Legion here in the hospital. and a full-time granddad. So I've learned to balance my time as far as when I can get certain things done, when I have to plan for other things to get done. And it's just all planning. And I learned that in the military. You know, you've got to learn how to plan ahead for one, but also you got to be able to make adjustments for in the here and now, so that if something comes up, you can pivot, do what you need to do, and then get back on track to your planning.
When you were in the military, where'd you serve?
Army. I served 18 months in West Germany on the East German border. I was with I was armor and supply specialist, where I was in charge of billions of dollars worth of equipment. And back then, if you signed that, when you signed that paper, when you took over your position, you were ultimately responsible for every single piece of equipment in that unit. And I was in an M110 A2 howitzer unit. So if I miss a question, my hearing is shot. So
That's all right. So you were unit armor. Was it called a 76 Yankee then?
yes, 76 Yankee, correct.
Yeah. So
I
that
rose from E1 to E4 in less than 18 months, which was back then extremely fast track, and that was based on really hard work. Even received the Meritorious Achievement Medal during that service.
sounds like
You
you
want
got
to
a
make an
visitor just
introduction?
walked through the door.
Yeah, come here. You say hi. There you go.
Hi, buddy. How are
That's
you
my
doing?
grandson now.
That's your grandson.
Yes, he
All
is.
right. That's why we do this. We get the
Yes, he is.
information out to
Everything I do
people,
because
and
of him.
you know, people have to vote. They vote all different reasons, and I think sometimes family. Well, I think most of the time family is the reason a lot of people vote. Um, so yeah, so being a '76 Yankee, not everybody knows what that was back then. So the reason I knew it is because that ended up being. I filled in as a '76 Yankee when I was in Germany also. So I was in Kitzigen and Würzburg. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I was
so
I was in Swainford and Bad Kissigan.
oh yeah, been there. So you know about Wild Flicking and all those places. We
Oh
used to
yeah,
go.
grass and deer and
Yeah,
snow up to your elbows and freezing
yeah.
cold. Because house units, we don't have no tents and shelter.
Well, it's like we used to call it wild chicken, right?
Yeah,
So
wild chicken.
that's
That
right.
area mud over in Hohenfeld.
Absolutely, I know about all that. So your military background, do you think that will be able to aid and assist you in your endeavors in the NC House?
It has aided me in everything that I do. Everything from leadership skills, because I was mentored by an E6 the first few months that I got there, and I took over my position as an E6, even though I was a private. So I've had those leadership skills instilled on me while I was in the military. It also helped me with time management, to be able to plan. It's taught me how to not only lead, but how to follow. And that's one of the biggest things that we've got to learn in today's society is not just how to lead, but we need to learn how to follow as well.
Right. Well, that's important. Not everybody can lead all the time, and sometimes somebody else has to be the head on the horse based on their specialties and things they do. So, in this race that you're in now, you're racing. You're running against how many challengers in the? You're a Republican. You
One,
you have one.
correct.
Have you faced any unique challenges in being you're in Gates County and Camden and throughout that area?
Well, not with the voters. Most everyone I've talked to, is already have a formed opinion of my opponent, and most of that is not good that I've been told. But I've been able to reach across the aisle with all the voters I've gone to, talking to both Democrats, unaffiliated independents. I went to an NAACP event Wednesday night, I'm sorry, Thursday night, and in Live City, and that went really well. And I've gone to several other events, and just talked to the voters and gotten their feel of the other candidate. I know him, but the my primary is a little bit unique, and that is which I'm not sure if you're aware of, but it was created. It's not like a generic primary. So I'm basically running against the Rhinos, my opponent, and then Howard Hunter, because he's already attacking me now, because he's already told people that I'm the only correct candidate that can actually beat him in November. So that I'm kind of like got them 3 battles all at one time that I'm dealing with. And that's fine because like I said, I'm firmly planted and I have a strong backbone and a strong mind and I can deal. And I have support of the community too.
And you said a while ago you met with the NAACP. Well, you know, you're a Republican. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I
Let's talk.
believe that even though I'm a Republican, I am supposed to represent everyone. It does not matter what their demographics are, what their race is, what their gender is, whether they're rich, poor, in the middle, homeless. All I've had, you know, personal ties to that. As you saw my grandson, you know, race never factors into anything that I do. For my grandson being biracial, I make sure that he understands that he can be judged on his character and not because of because of the color of his skin. He goes out and makes the best he can do, and I tell it to everybody. You know, and when I approach people and talk to them, they understand. You know, and I come to them at a human, personal level. I'm not a spit polished politician. You know, when I talk to folks, I'm honest and I'm brutally honest, and I just don't hold anything back with it.
Well, yeah. So many times I think Republicans feel that they can't go out and talk to some of the other parties because they haven't done it in the past. And I think if we've learned anything um, with the with Donald Trump as president, what we learned is that sometimes you have to cross the boundaries and go and speak to people. And sometimes you got to put that pride aside and talk about the issues that you agree to, that you agree on, and discuss those issues that you don't, and see how you can kind of mediate in between to come up with something that everybody can live with. And I
Exactly,
think,
that's exactly what I do. I deal with Democrat county on the boards that I serve on. All of our county commissions here are Democrats, as well as the town council here. You know, for 12 years I've been an advocate for citizens on to the different uh, commissions and city councils and whatnot. So I've been very engaged in that and bringing issues that citizens who are too afraid to put themselves forward, I'll go do it for them because they'll ask me. Um, and I've reached out to Democrats. I've worked with them. You know, I can work with anyone that's out there that's willing to make District 5 a better district and start having us recognized as an asset to this state instead of a hindrance. And if it means reaching across the aisle to do that, I'll do it. And I've already talked to several. I have talked to county commissioners in Pasquotank, Gates, and Hartford County, and I'm able to work with all of them to be able to get things done.
the let's say you're elected day one, you're you're in session. What are you going to do day one, the very first day? What are you going to do your first day there?
First day, I'm gonna seek a preacher and ask him to pray for me while start my 2 years. That's number one. Number two, I'm gonna give God thanks for me being able to be allowed to do that job. Then I'm gonna thank the voters. Those are the first three things right off the get go. I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do it publicly. Now the prayer, I do privately because that's my religious beliefs. The first thing I want to do is I want to look at the bills that were not allowed a veto override and try to reintroduce them, such as the veto of the Born Alive Act, which is what I call for protecting babies during a botched abortion. The law that will, I want to create legislation that will never, ever, ever allow Governor Cooper to violate constitutional rights again, to shut down small businesses, to be able to destroy the state the way he did. And I want to make sure that's done. I have other pieces of legislation that I'm working on, trying to make it so that law enforcement and first responders can get equipment and money to buy that equipment a whole lot easier than the process in which they do. Another piece of legislation I want to do is to create an accountability act that will start finding out where all this money is going that's supposed to be going for education. The other issue I want to see is where is the money that's going to community colleges. I want to know where that's going. And I want to put something in place that starts looking at, okay, why is Roanoke College Community College being left out of the loop when it comes to funding? How come it took so long to get College of the Albemarle money for their nursing wing. I realized that Howard Hunter wouldn't pass the budget, for the veto override, so they finally did it because they got an election coming up. But there were 6 years prior to that we've been suffering. So I want to see where all the dollars are going. I want to see where the money's going for all these projects like the 158 upgrades, east and west, that hasn't been done yet. It's been approved, it just hasn't been done. It's been approved decades. And that's just some of the things I want to get started. And it's going to take day one, though. Like I said, it's going to be all about getting acclimated and and whatnot. But those are some of the first things I want to start getting started, because I've only got 2 years, and I'm only one vote. So I've got to be able to pull other people along to getting things done. And I believe I can. I can work with Bobby Hannick. I can work with Keith Kidwell. I can work with a bunch of them and get it done.
What has been your biggest barrier to be successful and put yourself in Raleigh? What would you say of overall right now? What's your biggest barrier that you're having to face day in and day out?
Campaigning wise is finance. That's simple. Because it costs a lot of money to run. For me, it's mostly gas. Just be able to get there and talk to folks, and things like that. Because I have a Jeep and it burps when you fill it up. So financing your part during the election is one thing. Being able to get people to come out of this COVID fear, because I've had that twice. Being able to get people to come out of this COVID fear so that we can meet and have these group discussions is also another barrier, because a lot of people just still don't want to congregate yet. The other is fighting the party. When you're like I am and I'm willing to stand up to the party for my district, because what my district is telling me is different than what the party is saying, I've got to go with what people are telling me. And I'm not a parrot. I don't have anyone tell me what to say or what to do. I'm my own man, and I've always been that way. Yeah, and then time. Just time. The weird thing is, in Hertford County, we have 1,500, and last time I checked, about 1,512 registered Republicans. Now I got 2,700 votes. That means I was able to reach across the aisle to get people to vote for me that were not Republicans, 1,200 of them. And that's because of my message. However, with big tech censoring conservatives on Facebook, and I know that I get shadow banned a lot, and I don't do Twitter anymore. So the tech industry makes it really hard for us to get our message out like we want to do. So I do the old-fashioned way. I go to people, I talk to them on the street. And to me, time-consuming, exhausting and expensive, but it's well worth it.
Okay. Now, you spoke about Twitter, since you brought that up. I like to float interviews based on what you're telling me. With the changing of Twitter, and it's changed even over the last several days, I think they know that there's a new driving force coming, and for whatever reason, they're either trying to get in front of it or they're trying to hide some of the stuff that's been going on. Just a thought, don't know for sure. But so Twitter's coming back in, and then you have several other groups that are putting on online apps. So what are your thoughts on the other apps out there that are available?
Well, I've tried Rumble. I'm on Rumble, and I'm on Parler. They are a little confusing to use if you don't, do it all the time. And other than Facebook, that's pretty much the only things that I use right now. I've tried getting on True Social. I can't get up there yet, so I'm still trying to figure that out. I know they were having bugs at one time. Android phones, we can't get it up there yet, so that's another issue, because I'm not spending $1,000 on a phone. And I'll never go back to Twitter. I used to have an account with them, and based on everything that was going on Twitter, I decided I'll never go back to them again. I like the fact that Elon Musk bought it, but the devil's in the details as far as what he's going to do with it. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. but I'm just not sure, as far as where he's going to take Twitter from here. I do know that North Carolina create legislation that start, even though the federal government won't do it because of Section 230, to start holding these tech companies accountable for censoring people's First Amendment rights. If you trade your company on the stock market, if you're selling shares of your company to me, you should no longer be protected under Section 230. You should be able to be sued if you are censoring people. Whether you're sued by the state for the individuals or the individuals allowed to sue on their own accord is something that has to be worked out. And as to what the constitutionality of that is as well. I tell people all the time, I learned how to deal with the constitutional issues because of the boards that I serve on, especially the planning board, the zoning board of adjustment. Because that board of adjustment, we make quasi-judicial decisions. So we have to make sure that whatever decisions we make or what ordinances we create, we're not violating an individual's constitutionally protected rights. And the same would go for for the issue with suing big tech and whatnot until they can get rid of Section 230 in Congress.
Which that's kind of a Pandora's box. No matter who owns that box, because for years they've known they've had to do something to keep the control. Um, what do you think of the new censoring coming out of the White House with the new board creation to check uh, facts and disinformation board that they're coming up? What's your thought process on that?
When I was in the military, like stationed in Germany, we got to see socialism up close and personal. In Germany, they censored folks. Italy, France, Spain, Austria, all the countries I've been to. I've been to Canada censors folks. To me, it's nothing more than socialism. The biggest purveyor of censorship was Hitler. And I tell people, if we keep going down the path that we're going right now, we're not going to be much more different than what Germany was during the 1930s, 1940s. And we're dangerously close to that right now. We've had Democratic governors to violate people's constitutional rights with unconstitutional shutdowns during the COVID issue. We've had the president doing unconstitutional mask mandates and and vaccine mandates, which I'm gonna clarify something because I get a lot of people to get upset with me about that. I'm not anti-vaccine and I'm not anti-mask. My mom was in the hospital for 3 weeks. She caught COVID after her third week. I know nurses who wore that N95 mask and caught COVID in the hospital where they were working. So it's a personal choice. If you want to get the injection, go for it. If you want to wear a mask, I support you 100%. It just should not be a mandate, and I believe it's unconstitutional. That a line goes back to the censorship issue. Anytime we try to talk about it, we're automatically censored. And we don't have enough Republicans in Congress in Washington, D.C. right now to really do anything. Hopefully, after the election, we will. And we can start stripping some of this stuff that Biden's been doing. Well, let me rephrase that. Somebody else does, because I seriously don't think it's Biden. Somebody else is running this country. It's not Biden.
The Supreme Court has a lot to do with what we do in cases that go up there. So you brought up the mass and their ruling, and they kind of skated around the issue a little bit. But what they did say was that if you were a medical employee, you work in the medical field, or if you're to all the different things like that, that they could mandate all these little quirks about, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. So they didn't really constitutionalize that issue per se. That whole 100%. They didn't make exclusions for that too. What are your thoughts about that?
The Supreme Court has been a failure, both state and federal. We have like here in North Carolina, we have a radicalized Supreme Court with 4 Democrats that are up there. Especially when it came to the new maps, and I don't know if you've seen the news lately, but the guy that helped with the data with the maps in North Carolina is now being investigated in New Jersey for data manipulation. Supreme Court federally has failed the United States miserably. everything from First Amendment to Second Amendment to, and I believe that the mask mandates and the vaccine mandates fall under your First Amendment, Fourth and Fifth Amendment constitutional protections. And I think it's like 10th Amendment somewhere else in there as well. There's like 4 or 5 different amendments that are violated. But the Supreme Court is so worried about their personal view. Let me phrase that. They not well. They're worried about their personal viewpoint, but they're worried about how the American people, a certain demographic, views them on the Supreme Court right now. And they shouldn't be doing that. What they should be doing is reading the Constitution, going by what the text says, and saying whether a law is passed is constitutional or whether it's not constitutional. Example is Second Amendment says right of people to have and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, as you well know, over the centuries, 240 plus years we've been a country, every Supreme Court has ruled that the right of the people means the right of the citizens. But however, when it comes to the Second Amendment, when it says the right of the people, all of a sudden it becomes just because of the militias. It doesn't work that way. You can't have the right of the people one way or another. So the Supreme Court needs to step up and do a job on that. And they need to step up and do some other, to go ahead and wade in on this vaccine mandate and say, look, the federal government, for federal employees, can make mask mandates as part of their equipment to wear to work. That is a legitimate thing that they can do. If company says my employees are going to wear a mask when they come to work, that company has that right to do that. They don't have the right to tell somebody to put an injection in their arm, especially when it's experimental. 2, the government has no authority to tell a private citizen what they can and can't wear. Anywhere. Whether, I don't care what property you're on, they don't have that authority. They can tell their employees what they got to wear, but they can't tell a private citizen what they can wear and not wear. I got turned away from the VA from going there because I wouldn't wear a mask. And so that denied me of my medical services that I desperately needed because I can't wear one, but I would not wear a mask at the VA, so they told me I had to leave.
So
and
you talked briefly a while ago, and you said about the different laws and the amendments and the different things that keep the government from doing certain things. And since you brought it up, my thought process on that is the search and seizure. Well, would you say that do they have a right to search your blood to see if you have COVID, and do they have a right to seize you to force you to take a vaccine to keep your job? Because do they have that right? How do you feel about that?
The only place that has that right to do that is the military. Because, when you sign that paper, what a lot of people don't understand is when we signed that paper in the military, we automatically became government property at that point. We were no longer considered individuals. We are part of the government property at that point until we get out. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about the military. So when it comes to the military, you have to separate the demands that's required there versus civilians. Civilian, they don't have a right to take your blood unless you want to give it to them. They don't have a right to force you to take a vaccine. They don't have a right to test you for COVID without your permission. They don't have a right to segregate you in your home because you have COVID-19 or any other disease for that matter. That's putting you on house arrest and violating your Fourth Amendment rights. And sadly, we've not had enough politicians out there to stand up and follow through with lawsuits to get it to the Supreme Court where it could actually be ruled on. They'll lose in the lower Democrat-controlled courts, and then they just give up. Well, and I think here in North Carolina, I think the state legislature as a whole, for the Republicans, need to stand up as a group and start fighting this stuff, not instead of, like Keith Kidwell's a good one, who has really fought these issues in the courts. But it takes money. But the entire House stands behind it instead of just 1 or 2 people. It has legs.
Well, it has to be a law. It can't be a want list or a hope list. It's hope is not going to get you there. It's just got to have legislators to push whatever laws that you think that need to be on the books that aren't on the books, because you can have a wish and hope list, but that's all it'll be until you can get enough people behind it. And
Exactly.
that's one thing, and that's one of the reasons people run for office, so they can be heard and try to get out there. And being, people say, I don't want to be a politician. I don't like politicians. I this, and that about politicians. But people don't realize everything that you touch has a political base to it. You drive across the bridge, who got the contract? How'd they get the contract? You think they just happy go lucky walked in and got a contract on that bridge? No. Somebody in government reached out for somebody and gave them a contract to build the bridge. It's not like they just filled out a piece of paper. And then of course there's restrictions that come from the state that you gotta meet this standard, you gotta have this standard, you gotta do this, have this. So they know where they're going for the bids. They know pretty much who they want to set into for those places, because that's what makes us a dangerous political system. That's what makes us a dangerous society when we yield that much power to one body of folks to make those kind of decisions for the voter, for the people. So I always commend people who are running for office to make whatever changes they're pursuing, because guess what? It's ultimately going to be up to the voter on who's elected in your race or any other race. And it's your job to tell them who you are and what you represent, and hope that that's the direction that they go in. So, and we'll kind of close on this. I know you got some other things you got to take care of. The defund the police movement. What is your position on that, and what do you say to those on the other side of the aisle that may have a different position, if you have a different position?
It's funny you said that, because at the NAACP meeting I went to the other night, I actually spoke about that. We need to make sure that law enforcement has all of the necessary tools, equipment, training, and the money to do that. I believe there's a bill, SB 300, that deals with psychological training and issues for officers, and that needs more money. I would like to see, and I've talked to several sheriffs. Sheriff Wooten is one of them, that they would like to see money so that the first year's officer's salary and that vehicle is paid for, so that way the second year, these counties, especially the struggling ones like we are here in Northeast North Carolina, because we're Tier 1 district, to be able to afford to give officers more money for their salaries. So that's one of the things I really want to work on. Like I said, I've talked to him, and I've talked to other officers about it, and that's one of the things they really want to see done. But yeah, there's no such thing as defunding. I actually signed a pledge to defend, not defund.
And some of the things that happen in that defund the police, the ambushes across the country. A lot of people don't like to hear the word war on police. Do you feel that there's been a war on police?
For a long time. Not just recently, but for a long time. And most of it is being politically driven. If the politicians in Washington, D.C. and some of the other ones shut up, it would end a lot of these issues, but they keep race baiting, they keep flaming the fuel, or putting fuel in the fire, and then they'll stand back with a little fan and they'll flame the fire, they'll fan it. We've got to stop it. And it's when you've got people in Washington, D.C. that keep fueling this, and you've got people right here in North Carolina, in Raleigh, and in the county governments and these civic organizations that keep fanning this issue. Morgan Freeman, I don't know if you saw that Mike Wallace issue he did with 60 Minutes. Well, Morgan Freeman and Mike were talking about racism in America. And Mike Wallace asked him, he says, what can we do to end racism in America? And Morgan Freeman simply said, stop talking about it. And he says, I don't want Black History Month either. He said, well, you're going to relegate my history in this country to only 1 month? He said, we helped build this country. He said, you every day. He said, you stop calling me a black man, and I'm going to stop calling you a white man. Your name is Mike. My name is Morgan. And that's where we've got to start seeing it, as politicians, and stop all this nonsense that's coming out of Raleigh and out of Washington, D.C.
Okay, and last but not least, what would you say to a voter right now, looking you on this screen right now, like if you were working at the polls? What would you tell the voter right now about you that would tell them they need to go in and check off your name?
My morals and values can't be bought by anybody. I tell them, my experience on various boards that I'm on has taught me to balance the needs of the community and the individuals who are trying to either zone or, bring in a business, their constitutional rights. Um, Service. I believe in being a servant. Too many times we keep hearing this term, you're a leader in Raleigh. No, we're a public servant. We're supposed to go there to do the bidding of my community. And that's what it means to me. I'm not going there to represent a party or an ideology. I'm going there to represent the people that send me to Raleigh. And I pledged it to them. I pledged, when I get ready to make a serious vote on a high topic issue, I'm going to come back and talk to my community first and get their thoughts. And if I can't be here personally, I'm going to send someone here that can actually record it so that I can hear it and be able to make an informed decision whenever I get to Raleigh. Because I have the same personal stories that they do. Everything from homelessness to addiction to having money, lost money, having a business, lost it, to being disabled. You know, I'm an average American. I'm out of North Carolina, and I'm not one of these elites. And when I go there, I'm going to represent them because I am one of them. And that's exactly what I tell them. I tell them that every time I see them. At the time we put America and North Carolina first, and stop putting ourselves first.
Okay, and I know your grandson is there, and he's chomping at the bit to see it because we saw him come up to the screen.
Yeah, I haven't
We
seen him all weekend.
well, the public, like I said, we want to get the message out to the people so they can hear the candidate and make their own decision based on what they hear. Um, it's not me telling them who to vote for. It's them making up their own mind and listen to the candidates. Because I think it's so many times, especially in these primaries, people want to make a decision who to vote for based on previous history of who's been there the longest, who's not been there, who's built some unbuilt bridges. Let's call it that. And sometimes, people don't like to think about it, but people don't like to talk about term limits. One of the things that I think, our country really needs to visit is this thing called term limits. When you have somebody that's been in for 40, 42 years, and they've done nothing, accomplished nothing but been a politician that never established himself in anything, either a community activist or just a standard politician that's, got lucky, so to speak, for whatever reason.
Well, I actually signed a pledge for the article of for term limits for Convention of States, as well as budget restraints and there's one other issue with it. And I've also signed the Grover Northwest pledge for taxation, because I don't believe we should be paying taxes on income tax. We're taxed to death, and I believe income tax, if you're working hard, you should keep your money. I've also this issue with term limits. I believe it should be everybody. Everything from an elected dog catcher to the President of the United States. No one should be able to sit in an office for 10, 20, 30 years. You should, as a House of Representative member, 8 years, you're done. That'd be 2 4-year terms if you're dealing with president. Same way at the state senate. After you do 8 years, you're done. Let someone else new come in with some fresher ideas. And after 8 years, you start getting too comfortable in your seat. The first few years you're chomping at the bit trying to get stuff done, but then after that, you forget who you are, where you come from, and why you're there. And so, yeah, I'm a firm believer in term limits.
All right. So if you win in 8 years now, you're going to sit there and say, "Hey, I'm done." Either move up or move out, right?
Yeah, and either move up or move out, and even then that comes with stipulations that if I do move up, that's term limits. And that's just the way I believe. No person should. politics was not meant to be a career. It was originally designed so you go there, serve a couple of terms, you go home, you live under the same rules that you just passed.
Well
And
said.
somehow or
Well
another,
said.
this country forgot about that.
Okay, now, so if you get elected in 8 years from now, I'm gonna come to you and say, "Hey, you're done. You remember what you said?"
But trust me,
So
I'll remind myself, and I'll have a plaque on the back of my wall that says term limits.
there you go. Again, so folks, you heard it here. You heard it first, right out of the candidate's mouth. Donald Kirkland's running for NC House in District 5. You
Correct.
heard it here. You heard what he had to say. Like I said, this is just to kind of conversate with the candidate. I think this is a better way of doing things with everything going on now. And Donald, thank you for coming out, taking time. I know you've been the campaign trail. There's everybody else there's hitting it now that COVID is gone, and they're hitting it hard. And I appreciate you taking time to talk to law enforcement community, and the voters of North Carolina as you know run your race in those counties down in the District 5. So be
I
safe out
appreciate it.
there. Um, you know, it's always nice to hear somebody talk about defending and not defunding, or reimaging, or redirecting funds. Anytime somebody says redirect funds, reimage, all that means is take money away from law enforcement. Same thing as defund. So I tell people when somebody says no, I only said redirect. Well, that's still taking money from the funds of law enforcement. So that's
Well,
still defunding police.
all they've got to do is ask around here to law enforcement, find out how much I stood up for them and the first responders. And in 2020, I received y'all's endorsement during the general election, and I appreciated that over Howard. And I know y'all don't do endorsements during the primary, but and I appreciate this opportunity, to come on and speak, to a group that I respect, quite a bit. And I look forward to November coming after I get done with this speed bump here in May 17th.
Well, yeah, just to kind of we don't do the primary endorsements for the most part. There are certain races that we may get into. It's all kind of a case by case. But this year we've not really jumped too far into the primaries, and we do this forum is open for Democrats to come on and have their conversation too, to talk about their platform and their issues, because we respect everybody. We want to hear what they say. You don't accomplish anything when you shut people down and don't hear what they have to say.
Exactly.
And
You've got to have
that's
open line of communication.
absolutely. So I encourage Democrats, if they want to come on here and have conversation. Unfortunately, a lot of them this year, because of the defund the police movement, aren't really stepping out of the shadows to have the conversation. And I think that's unfortunate, because if they stood on position, they need to stand out and tell us why they stand on it. I mean, everybody has a
Exactly.
right to have a different opinion. And, bottom line is, whoever the political folks in charge, they're the ones who's going to rule the roost. And that's how we as law enforcement officers have to look at it. Um, it's just unfortunate that it got down to defunding the police, which is probably the most dangerous thing. I'll say no, it was the most dangerous thing to ever happen in America, when certain folks in politics turn on law enforcement. Yet they have law enforcement close by if they need them, and then they also have their own private security to protect themselves when the average citizen has to go home to knowing their law enforcement has been defunded by the very ones who are funding their stuff. So, but
Well, it
again,
makes it hard because you can't get new employees to come into a town or to a city or a county to work in law enforcement anymore, and we're having shortages all over the place.
exactly.
We have some areas that are working half staff, 3/4 staff, and that puts a safety burden on the communities that they're supposed to be serving, and it's stressing the officers out because they're having to work more hours and deal with the stress and everything else of being away from their families more than what they normally would be, and pay is just not there because, like hospital, officer can't, if he works overtime, he got to take comp time. He can't get paid overtime. That really is not doing that officer any good monetarily to do that. And we've got to put out a better message and start showing support and stop all this nonsense.
Well, we are a law enforcement organization, so make no bones about it. We don't apologize for that. We do when all is said and done, we're going to endorse candidates that are that help protect law enforcement, citizens of North Carolina, voters of North Carolina, and the best thing is we do reach across the aisles, and the bottom line is everybody needs protection. Everybody needs to feel safe, whether it's in their schools, or whether it's their homes, or whether it's in the streets or an event. Everybody needs to feel safe, and that's not a party affiliation. That's just officer safety, safety across North Carolina, and safety across our country. So anyway,
Last I heard, that was called being American.
that's right. So anyway, thank you for stopping in, and to everybody out there who was with us tonight or this evening to watch this video. This is on a Zoom broadcast that we're putting out there, and take time to listen to the platform of the candidates as we put them up here, and just remember, always be real, always be safe, but more importantly, always be ready. You never know when the wolf is at your door. And hope you guys have a great evening. And we're going to be signing out.
Thank you.